Celebrities have gained admiration from the silver screen to the catwalk to the concert stage. But when they disappear without a trace and leave behind a trail of unanswered questions, that's when they really grab our attention. Number 10. When well-known band The Beatles was at a fever pitch in 1964, they were preparing for their first tour, which would see them go to Denmark, Hong Kong, the Netherlands, Australia, and New Zealand. Unfortunately, the day before their departure, Ringo Starr, the band's drummer, collapsed and was hospitalized with a case of tonsillitis. Hotels were booked, and so were concert halls, and thousands of tickets had already been sold. The manager, Brian Epstein, knew that canceling this tour would be an absolute disaster, and so the band needed to find a stand-in. This is where 24-year-old London drummer Jimmy Nicol comes in. His studio work impressed the manager and one of the other band members, Paul McCartney, who knew him. 6 audition songs later, Nicol was hired. He was a Beatle for 13 days and participated in press conferences and enjoyed the worship that he was getting from fans. He played with the band for 8 concerts and had taped a TV show as the drummer. Ringo was soon released from hospital and met up with his band in Melbourne. The following day, Nicol did his final interview as a Beatles member and headed for the airport. He was given an inscribed gold watch by Epstein before boarding the plane. When the fans, the stage performances, and the recognition disappeared, so did the forgotten Beatle. The drummer was gone. The disappearance was so significant that it inspired the author, Jim Birkenstadt, to look into it. He titled his book The Beatle Who Vanished. Nicol had vanished sometime in the late 60s, and had last been seen walking out of his first-floor rented apartment in Kentish Town, North London, never to be seen or heard from again. A neighbor recounted that Nicol had been with a woman named Josephina, who he thought was likely his wife. According to him, the two spoke of moving to Mexico. The book is one of the first historical accounts of the missing man. It unravels the twisting trail of a mystery that's encompassed by blacklisting, betrayal, bankruptcy, and the eventual disappearance. In 1965, the drummer had declared bankruptcy with debts of around £4,000. This came just 9 months after he'd performed with the band. Nicol's son, Howie, had not heard from his father in over 13 years, and believed that he'd become a recluse. He also confirmed that Josephina was most likely his father's wife. His disappearance left many wondering whether or not he was still alive, but Wikipedia consistently updates his age. Howie understood his father's desire to be hidden and remain undiscovered, but no one really knew what had become of him. The son explained that he was given instructions when people would come asking questions. His father told him that the best thing to do was to tell people that he was no longer alive and that they'd go away. One of the most recent yet unconfirmed sightings came in 2011, when someone had stated that they saw the man working on a building site somewhere in Amsterdam. When he approached the man, he asked him if he was Jimmy Nicol, and the alleged drummer nodded, signed an autograph, and withdrew back into the site without another word. Paul McCartney also understood the 13-day drummer's reluctance to speak about the time that he'd been a Beatle, since he had an immense amount of fame thrust upon him, only to have it abruptly ripped away once more. Number 9. Pierre Bianconi made the list of celebrities that are still creepily missing today. He played as a defender for many European teams and was originally from Corsica. His disappearance was strange, and even though there'd been some sightings of him, he was still considered a missing person. Pierre was a professional soccer player in France during the 1980s and 90s. He was known to display some rather rough behavior on the field and off. He would regularly take things a bit far and be famous for the viciousness of his random tackles. At one point, he'd been given a red card for assaulting another player, but he ripped it up before headbutting the referee. It wasn't determined if he had any known enemies, or if an enemy had led to his strange disappearance. That being said, Pierre was also a rather caring individual. In one instance, a security guard had beaten one of the soccer player's fans, and so he ran up and fought him off. He was also said to be passionate about his island home, where Napoleon Bonaparte was from. Rumors ran rampant, stating that the missing man had been affiliated with a nationalist movement that wanted Corsica to secede from France and become its own country. His sudden vanishing came on the 29th of December in 1993, and it was speculated that this movement that he'd been involved in had something to do with it. Of course, this couldn't be determined. Pierre was 31 years old when he disappeared in Bastia, where he was last seen. It was in this small town of Corsica that his car was also found abandoned at a port. Efforts to locate the missing man proved futile. According to a French language site, his sister recalled that her brother seemed a bit withdrawn that holiday, and had said to her that he'd see her later before disappearing forever. This indicated that he intended to return sometime later. There was no evidence of foul play. In fact, there was no evidence of anything at all. The man had simply been swallowed up by the planet, never to be seen or heard from again. He was incredibly devoted to his family, and would even plan to get sent off during a match so that he could spend a few days in Corsica to see them. Pierre was born on the 16th of November, 1962, and would now be 62 years old. He's been missing for 30 years and 5 months. Little is known about the investigative efforts that have gone into trying to locate the famous and missing soccer player. Number 8. The strange story of Christina Licorice McKechnie is one of the far more engaging rock and roll mysteries out there. Christina was a Scottish vocalist, a songwriter, and a percussionist for a popular band known as the Incredible String Band. The woman was born in Edinburgh, Scotland on the 2nd of October in 1945. The vocalist would then disappear sometime between the 1980s and 90s, putting her age at somewhere between the mid to late 40s. The events that took place after her birth would all lead up to her inevitable vanishing. In her teenage years, she became involved with Scottish folk musician Bert Jansch, and left home with the intention of marrying the man. All that's known about this fact is that the marriage didn't happen, because Bert had left for Morocco in 1963. During poetry readings that took place at many different folk clubs dispersed all through Edinburgh, Christina met Robin Williamson. Robin was a Scottish multi-instrumentalist, singer, songwriter, and founding member of the band with whom the missing woman would soon become affiliated. Robin claimed that Christina, who was also known as Licky, had fallen right into his arms. She left for Morocco along with her newfound love, and in 1966, joined the Incredible String Band. Her very first contribution to the band had been to form the backing vocals for Painting Box. Christina had also participated in the recordings, including The Hangman's Beautiful Daughter. Not long after, she would be considered a full-time band member, with her unique vocal style and percussions standing out. Things began to take a slight turn when the group started to dabble in Scientology. Both Robin and the missing woman would become members of the movement. However, following a lukewarm reception at Woodstock and the newfound spiritual direction, both Christina and the co-member, Rose Simpson, parted ways with the group. In 1972, the missing woman ended her relationship with Robin. 2 years later, she went on to perform with Mike Grayson, Woody Woodmansey, Leonard Hallowell, and others at a Scientology benefit being held in East Grinstead. After this, she joined the Silver Moon Band and headed for California, where she married Brian Lambert, another musician. Strangely, she met up with her former partner and band member, Robin, and is married band for a gig in 1977, and was credited on their album Journey's Edge as Licky Lambert, which could have been one of the aliases that she'd used during her life. But the 80s would bring about some changes, including her disappearance. During this time, she joined Woodmansey's band U-Boat. She jumped between performances and her part-time waitressing jobs, and eventually, she and Lambert would amicably divorce. The last confirmed sighting of the woman came in 1986, when she visited her family in Edinburgh. Most sources indicate that she left Los Angeles in 1987, while other accounts claim that she was inhabiting the Arizona area or even Sacramento. Her disappearance was said to have come when Christina had been seen hitchhiking across the Arizona desert, according to music journalist Mark Ellen, who's also stated that her family hadn't even heard from her. This statement was particularly odd since her sister alleged that she'd been recovering from an unspecified surgery in Sacramento 3 years later, but this claim has remained unconfirmed. Another former band member believes that Christina is no longer alive, and despite the claims that she's been listed on the Los Angeles Police Department's missing person list, There's no information regarding her anywhere on their site. It's noted that her royalties have been left unclaimed, which has thrown a shadow on posts on various discussion forums. One person who's said to be investigating her disappearance claimed that she was alive and hiding in plain sight somewhere in California. This person also explained that they believed she did not want to be found and that they weren't going to give her location away. Another person, or possibly the same individual, posted on another forum and indicated that they were satisfied with their conclusion that the missing woman was alive and well. They speculate that she may have broken away from her family or the band, a theory that remains unconfirmed. Number 7. Andrew Cardoza Flugelman was born on the 27th of November in 1943. He was described as a computer whiz, a publisher, a photographer, an attorney, and a programmer. He's best known as a pioneer in the shareware business model for software marketing. He's also been referred to as the quiet giant of the PC revolution. Some of Andrew's notable works are the magazines that are still in operation today, PC World and Macworld. He'd also given away some free software like PC Talk, a communications application that he had written. By 1981, Andrew was a book packager and a former corporate attorney in Marin County, California. He bought one of the first IBM PCs and taught himself how to program. These noteworthy and career-making accomplishments, though, did not prevent the well-known man from disappearing forever. He was just 42 years old when he vanished. It was July of 1985, after which his vehicle, a 1982 Mazda, was discovered parked near the Golden Gate Bridge. And when his friends were asked about the whole ordeal, they still seemed stunned, even though it's been some 30 years or so since it happened. Right before he completely vanished, Andrew was diagnosed with cancer. He was also suffering from colitis, inflammation of the colon, which can induce weight loss, loss of appetite, anemia, and malnutrition. He was on medication for the illness, but one of the side effects was periods of mental confusion. On the 6th of July, he left the family residence in Marin County, California, sometime in the morning hours. He got to his office in Tiburon and called his wife that afternoon. After that, he was never seen again. The discovery of the Mazda only came a week later. It was stationed near the toll plaza on the Marin County side. According to friends and family, the man was acting strangely a few days prior to the sudden vanishing. His remains have never been located, but his family did hold a memorial service for him in New York not long after. Andrew had been wearing a blue shirt, blue pants, and black shoes at the time of his disappearance. He's characterized as having brown hair, brown eyes, and a mustache. He was said to be a height of 5 feet 11 inches and weighed somewhere around 170 pounds. The agency responsible for his investigation is the Tiburon Police Department, which can be reached at 415-499-7238, reciting the case number 851154. Andrew Flugelman would now be the age of 81 years old and is classified as lost or injured. Number 6. Srinthip Sirawan was born in 1926 in Thailand. She aspired to be an actress, which she promptly became, starring in films from 1957 and TV show dramas since 1961. Sirawan later married and continued her acting career. She was a leading character in a movie called Hell Hotel. The actress would receive the Saraswati Award 3 times and the Best Supporting Actress Award twice. She acted in The Free Chinese Movement in 1959, Son of the Northeast in 1982, and acted in a television drama. On the 3rd of December in 1987, the actress was working on another movie when she suddenly vanished. Her disappearance left family, friends, and fans completely baffled. A lengthy investigation ensued, and there was no clue as to where she may have gone. Sirawan's name has come to us as early as 2021. A music video that was created by the Filmmakers for Liberation referred to ongoing situations in Thailand. In the video, photos and videos of individuals who'd gone missing since 2016 were featured. But one of the images, though, included the missing actress from 1987. The actress was 61 years old at the time that she disappeared. There's been no trace of her, and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance remain unclear and undisclosed. But no indication that Sirawan was met with foul play has been indicated. Not much is known about how she disappeared or when she was last seen, but it's been over 36 years since the female actress mysteriously vanished with no conclusion in sight. Number 5. The case of 45-year-old Terry Splinter is a strange one that harbors many conflicting sources. Splinter was born on the 28th of October in 1971 in Cape Town, South Africa, and gained German citizenship in 1997. She was a well-known German South African who's taken to writing and spoken word poetry. Tracy regularly performed at poetry slams and was a popular poet in the community. Her works are done mainly in English, Afrikaans, and German. Up until July of 2016, she'd been registered in Germany, where the welfare office was paying the rent for her apartment. It was sometime in August of that year that she mysteriously vanished. Her parents went on to hire a private detective agency through a lawyer in South Africa who would conduct a secret investigation in July of 2017. The investigation turned up some strange discoveries. According to the agency, Tracy had been staying at 2 different hostels located in Switzerland in August. The hotels were called Alpina and Schneider. She'd used cash to pay for the overnight stays, but it wasn't indicated how long she had stayed at either hotel. It was found that sometime later, she made an attempt to check into another hotel that was a bit more expensive and also located in Val's. She wanted to pay cash here as well, but the hotel refused to accept it and turned her away. The staff at Hotel 7132 explained that Tracy had angrily and abruptly stormed out of the hotel and into the street. It was near the end of the month, on the 29th of August in 2016, when her suitcases had been discovered abandoned at a bus stop that had gone unnamed. But some sources claim that the luggage was actually found in a hotel room, which is unlikely since the staff alleged that she'd stormed out and they refused her payment method. The suitcase was on wheels and had been full of the missing woman's clothing, but that wasn't the only thing that was inside. There was a camera, laptop, cell phone, walking sticks, and documentation. A map of an Asian market located in Switzerland was also discovered, marked in a ballpoint pen. Many questions have been left unanswered here. Why was she in Switzerland? Why was all of her stuff left behind? During the investigation, the detective had shown Tracy's picture to residents and visitors around the areas where her last activities were recorded. This proved futile. They then headed to the market to question people there, but to no avail. She may have been meeting someone or heading to another hotel, but it was as though the abyss had swallowed up this famous poet. There is a Twitter post from one of the missing woman's friends stating that she'd gone missing 1 year prior and was asking the public for help. The former German chief detective, Reinhard Knapp, explained that Tracy's parents were desperate to find their missing daughter, with whom they had no contact with for a long time. They wanted to know that she was doing okay. In August of 2017, 1 year after her actual disappearance, a missing person report was finally opened, but a conflicting source indicated that the investigation had concluded in 2016 without success in locating the missing individual. The investigative personnel had since turned to the media, hoping to find any new clues. Knapp hopes that one day he can tell the family that their daughter is doing well and doesn't want to even consider the worst-case scenario. He explained that anything could have happened that day. Should anyone have any information on this missing person, you're urged to make contact with the Graubünden police using the contact number 081-257-7111. Number 4. The name Zoe McClellan may be a familiar one to most who enjoy the crime TV franchise NCIS. In this case, she appears in NCIS New Orleans, where she plays Meredith Brody, as well as Designated Survivor and even The Mentalist. She was born in California and raised in Washington. She attended the South Kitsap High School in Port Orchard, where she was crowned the homecoming queen in 1992. McClellan was married to Jean-Pierre Guy Gillian from 2012 up until their 2016 divorce. Their marriage had brought with them one child, Sebastian. While she's known for her appearance in these TV shows, many aren't aware that she mysteriously disappeared, along with her son, and is now wanted for kidnapping. The two divorcees were in a custody battle in 2017, when Gillian claimed that McClellan had taken Sebastian along with her to Toronto during the production of Designated Survivor. But the father expressed that he hadn't heard from either of them since April of 2019. The attorney, Lawrence Markey, explained that Sebastian is still missing, but is believed to be with McClellan, who's also vanished. In 2018, previous kidnapping allegations against the actress had been dropped when the judge declared that moving the son to Canada was not child abduction. After Gillian made another report of abduction when the actress moved with the son to Toronto, the judge once again overruled it. He stated the move was merely a result of the mother's work in a field in which it was known by both parents that she may need to work outside the area of Los Angeles. But their whereabouts remain unknown. In May of 2021, charges were filed against the woman for child custody deprivation and child stealing. While she's considered a wanted person, it appears that she was never found. There's been no record of McClellan's arrest in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office. The last that the worried father had heard, the pair had been in New Orleans, but now they were completely off the grid. The actress has also not appeared in any further movies or TV shows, with her last appearance being in 2019. It was found that Gillian had made 2 separate reports of kidnapping during the custody battle whenever McClellan had worked outside of Los Angeles. There have been various claims surrounding the missing woman, including an allegation that she'd been experiencing paranoia and that she was planning the homicide of her ex-husband. But none of these claims ever amounted to anything. For quite some time, there were no reported sightings of the 2 people. But then an exclusive interview with Charlie Barber revealed that both the actress and her son were still alive and well. Barber explained that the friendship began through innocent messages like, "Sorry about what's going on, let me know if I can help." This was referring to the custody battles and the allegations made against Gillian himself, who'd been in prison at the time. He explained that he had a son that was almost the same age as Sebastian, and so McClellan thought that it would be nice to have the 2 get to know each other, since she didn't let her son out of the house. According to Barber, the missing and wanted actress told him that they didn't leave the apartment because the father would harm them. But then she would visit him in January of 2020 and the families bonded. But things took a turn when the man realized that something was off. It's uncertain if he cut ties with her, but he hasn't given any indication as to her whereabouts. The interview did confirm that Sebastian was living with McClellan. Number 3. Francis Lewis Clark was famous for a different reason. In 1885, he established the CNC mill and elevator, and largest flour mill in the Pacific Northwest. He was one of Spokane's earliest millionaires and was already born into a wealthy family. It was also Clark who founded the America's Cup race, sold the land, and carried the contract that allowed Louis Davenport to build the Davenport Hotel. He financed the creation of many downtown buildings, including the American Legion building. Clark made investments in banking, mining, and real estate. A few years later, in 1898, he and his wife Winifred hired a well-known architect, Kirtland Cutter, to design a mansion that would be placed on 7th Avenue in Spokane, Washington. In 1910, his health began to decline. That same year, a second mansion was made, this time on Hayden Lake, Idaho. It became known as the Honeysuckle Lodge, which was later turned into a country inn named the Clark House. On the 10th of May, 1904, Clark played the part of the defendant in the case of Chemung Mining Company versus Janley, and in 1906, he would become the vice president of Spokane's Inland Railway Island Company. His fame, though, would later come to an end. It was the evening of the 17th of January in 1914. The valet arrived to pick him and Winifred up to head to the Santa Barbara, California train station. They would often travel to Southern California during the winter to escape the cold, but instead of getting into the vehicle with his wife, Clark simply gave her a goodbye kiss before instructing the chauffeur to meet him the following morning. Clark was last seen setting off on a mile-long walk down the boardwalk back to his hotel, but he was never seen or heard from again. That evening wasn't any different than any of the other nights or days before, but the next morning there was no sign of the man. Strangely though, the hat that he'd been wearing that night was found adrift at a beach between the hotel and the train station. During the investigation, the chauffeur had mentioned that the millionaire was not in the best of health for such a long walk, but had been in high spirits. Some believe that he'd plunged into the ocean, maybe even going after his hat that blew off. But 2 weeks later, the case made headlines again. "Capitalist being held for ransom," read the headline of a newspaper. The Los Angeles Examiner had also published an eerie anonymous letter that had been sent to the newspaper's offices. It explained that millionaire F. Lewis Clark was being held for ransom. The blackmailers demanded a sum of $75,000 for his safe return. Police asked for proof that he was still alive, but no such evidence was given. It didn't take long for this lead to be dropped. Winifred later volunteered that her husband may have checked himself into a sanitarium in Los Angeles, but this could never be confirmed. The day after she'd made this statement, on the 21st of January, her brother-in-law offered a $5,000 reward for the safe discovery of Clark, or a $2,000 reward for his body. In February of that year, a body had washed onto the shore in the area where the missing man was last seen. Friends headed to Spokane to identify the body, but it wasn't him, and the case went cold until June. It was then that a woman by the name of Margaret Kelly had been arrested. She'd also gone by other names, including Mary Ella Allen and Clarice the Blonde. She was being accused of being part of a ring made up of false mediums and blackmailers. The group had preyed on the vulnerable to extort money, and surprisingly was being led by a private detective named Edgar Byron. Kelly denied that Clark had been one of those victims, and without further evidence, nothing could be substantiated. And again, the case had gone cold. A whole 15 years later, in February of 1929, yet another headline presented itself. This time, it came from the Boston Globe, reading, "Woman explains long unsolved mystery." Kelly was the woman, and she'd gone back to the police station, supposedly disturbed by a guilty conscience. She told the police about the role she played in the homicide of the missing man, but after thorough interrogation, her story was deemed nothing more than a fabrication that couldn't be checked or even proven. When she left, the confessor told the reporter that the police had done all they could, ending her statement with, "I hope I'm not goofy." Again, the case went cold. After all these years, the man's body was never found, leaving a trail of unanswered questions. Winifred attempted to handle the estate, but by 1922, she ultimately had to sell her possessions. At the time of his disappearance, the missing man was 52 years old. The unsolved mystery had jumped from accident to intentional disappearance to abduction, to a hoax, a ripoff, and eventually nothing. It's now a cold case. It's been over 100 years since the disappearance, and the case has still not been concluded. Investigators and historians have been left wondering what happened to Francis Lewis Clark. Number 2. Drummer, teacher, composer. These were the words used to describe the Canadian jazz legend Claude Ranger. His impact was incredibly deep, but then he disappeared. Ranger was born in Montreal in 1941. He was immediately attracted to the drums and would serve a professional apprenticeship. His recorded oeuvre is small and shrinking. It's for this reason that his legacy has been limited to the memories of the people who were there. Everyone who was there remembered the smell of smoke from the cigarettes that were chain-smoked during performances, and extreme technical difficulty. His mystique, however, had been enhanced by the sudden disappearance of the legend in 2000. He was never heard from again, and his remains were never found. Ranger was 59 years old when he mysteriously vanished. Premature passings are the common sort among professional musicians, a high-risk lifestyle that embraced the artist. Vanishing acts like this are a rare kind. The disappearance compares with that of Richie Edwards as the nearest equivalent. It was on the 2nd of November in 2000 that Ranger left his one-room apartment, which was located in a subsidized housing complex on 30th Avenue, Aldergrove. It's been 24 years since the disappearance, and we're no closer to determining the fate of the jazz legend. An investigation had been launched the following year by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and has remained open, but in all these years, no leads have presented themselves. It's noted that several years leading up to the vanishing, Ranger had been disengaged from everything that kept him going as a musician, until eventually withdrawing from music itself. In these years, the musician was in a state of considerable reflection and regret. In 1996, he'd still been performing when the bassist, Kieran Overs, had seen him on a late afternoon standing on the corner of Denman and Robson Street in Vancouver. Overs asked the musician how he was doing, and his response was odd. He said, quote, "I don't want to be remembered as that guy with the cigarette in his mouth." He wanted to be known for his drumming, not the way he appeared. It had been a justified concern at the time. He expressed this again the year that he went missing. This time, Ivan Bramford, Ranger felt as though he was only famous for the way he appeared and carried himself, and not for his musical accomplishments. The legend had in fact stopped smoking and later stopped drinking as well. In 1997, the drummer sold his drums and made one final public appearance in 1998 at Vancouver's International Jazz Festival. After that, he headed to Alder Grove alone. Even though he vanished from the public eye, and then from the face of the planet, Claude Ranger remains an inspiring figure in the history of the jazz world. No one knows where the man had gone, what direction he was heading, or where he ended up. He was just gone, and it stayed that way for over 20 years. Number 1. Adding to the list of top writers, poets, and authors that mysteriously vanished is the Czech poet František Gelner. He was described as the poet who turned anarchist. He was known for his political satire as well as his critiques of the bourgeoisie. He was born in June of 1881 to a merchant father. While still in grammar school, Gelner's literary interests began to show themselves, and soon he would become a well-respected writer. The theme of his poems focused on disillusionment in contrast to a youthful zest. Gelner was among the first people to be drafted by the Austro-Hungarian army at the start of the First World War. In 1911, he became a cartoonist and editor at a Czech newspaper. While his name may not sound very familiar, he was a well-known writer of his time until his disappearance in late 1914, under mysterious circumstances. He'd last been seen during the army's retreat on the Galician front that year and had reportedly been suffering from poor health and apathy. He had rheumatism and sciatica. For this reason, many theories have come up regarding the missing poet's fate. He was said to have left the front that August and had been relaxing. On the 13th of September of that year, the Czech literature community was struck by a baffling mystery, as he was reported missing and subsequently listed as a missing person. With the uncertainty of his fate and the strange rumors that surfaced, there was hope being fed that he would eventually pop up when the war was over, but he never did. It was conjectured that the 33-year-old had been living somewhere else and had told no one. The enigma surrounding his disappearance has not ceased to perplex historians and enthusiasts. The man was not just a well-known poet, but also viewed as a symbol of the artistic rebellion of his time. His works directly challenged what society deemed normal, ultimately making him a prominent cultural landscape figure. But it was perhaps this radicalism that led to him being deemed as a controversial individual, who was regularly at odds with the authorities. Some wonder if his disappearance had been purposeful, maybe even as a form of political protest. It's been argued that if it had been intentional, then it may have been so that he could continue to use anarchist ways from behind the scenes. Many believe that something far more sinister may have occurred, especially due to his affiliation with the anarchist circles. It's also been suggested that he met his demise purely due to his beliefs. Search efforts were quickly launched following the report, but no conclusive leads or evidence leading to his whereabouts were ever uncovered. It's been 110 years since the sudden vanishing, and still no leads, clues, or historical documentation have been unearthed regarding the missing poet. Images of Gelner depict him as a bearded man with wavy hair, who also wore eyeglasses. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.